Good morning, everybody. Today we're working with our I/O controller, as we just saw earlier. And so we're working with our I/O controller for our chatbot project. As you can see, our I/O controller, because it is a controller itself, we're going to keep that inside our package for controller, so chat.controller. As you can see, it's over here inside our project library. We can see where that's set up. And we have our I/O controller right there, .java. And so because it's a .java file, of course, its class name will be I/O controller as well. We have 5 imports that we're working with for the project. You know, there are other ways we could do input, like I said, but we're using this specifically to handle it for this project. And so inside the .io package, we have our Java file or java.io.file, .io exception, and print writer. The IO exception is so we can handle any errors that we just talked about earlier on the board. The print writer is the easy way to write to a file, and we'll handle that when we talk about the writing to the file component. The calendar component is so we can get access to some time information for file saving purposes. And our scanner, we're using that so we can actually read the information. That's from just java.util, like we've been using all year. As you can see, I have a public class IO controller. And because a IO controller, the responsibility that's going along with that, because it's set, because we don't need to make an instance of that, we're deciding to make these two methods, we're working with this as static methods. Because these methods don't need an instance to run of IO controller. They're just methods that run themselves. As you notice right here, there are no data members that belong to this class. It's just the two methods itself. And that's why we're making them as static methods, because by making them a static method, what that provides for us as a user, as a programmer that is it provides us a way to simply just, hey, here is some code I can run, it executes, it's done, and it doesn't have to be attached to an object. And for the purposes of I/O, I just need to grab the text or the file, wherever it's going for that, and just have it operate. And so we have right here our static string load from file to read a file, and our static void save to file so we can actually save information. Now, so I have access to my controller object, I have my controller as a parameter as one of those for each of those methods. I in fact keep it as the first parameter for it, and I give it the really boring name of app. Because again, by giving parameters names, things that you can explain exactly what they are, it makes life a little bit easier. First, for our reading from the file or saving, loading it up, I have the method name load from file, giving a pretty explanation of what's going on. It takes a string file name and the app parameter so it can load that up. So we have our method right here of load from file. Again, it's a static method, which means I'm going to call it externally using the class name to call it. And it takes an app parameter and a string file name. Now again, because we're using the process of having a good compilable method the entire time, my string results equals blank. Because it's a string method, I automatically attach a string variable and give it a correct value, in this case nothing. And then my last line of code, line 76 right here, returns that variable that's been initialized. This guarantees that I have a compilable code all the way through. This process of always writing compilable code is a great thing to do to make sure you're always actually using things properly. Then we just have our try catch block. Again, inside the try block, we're going to open this as a root level project. In this case, I'm inside chatbot 2017. And you can see I have commonwords.text. That's the only thing I'm going to be passing to this one, but I made this method right here very generic, because even though I'm only opening common words right now with this, I want to be able to open other things with it. For example, my saved text. I could actually open my previous file and open that for it. And so I want to make sure I have it so I can use that as a parameter-based one instead of only open commonwords.text. And that's going to be right here, like I said, at the root level of the project, because in Eclipse and Java, the way the class path has access to automatically is directly to the project folder itself. Then we have our file open file. That's where we open that file itself. In this case, common words is what we're going to be sending to it. I then grab a scanner to consume that file. And it's going to scan through the file, passing open file as a parameter. And again, because scanner consumes the file as it uses it, we have it so we have to make sure we read through that properly. And so I'm going to grab the first line out of that, which by calling next line, it's going to eat the first line of text inside that file, stores it into current line because of a string that's declared outside of the while loop, so I can use it externally as well. And then as long as there is still code to read, or text to read, excuse me, as long as there's still text to read inside that file, I'm going to grab the text that I just read, in this case current line. I'm going to add a new line to it, marker, because when we use the .nextLine method, it eats the end of line marker that's at the end of the line. So it grabs whatever's that whole line, but what tells it to go to the next line, it ignores that. That's what says it to separate. And so I'm appending that new line on here again so I can still keep my file in the same value. It'll allow me to also be able to parse that file and split it apart in a new way. And so that's what we're using it right there. I grab that line that I just ate, I put it inside my results variable. I say current line equals file scanner at next line, so it's going to grab that value. And so this while loop is going to repeat until that next line fails. And so it will, this last line right here, current line equals file scanner at next line, will grab the last line of text. That last line of text will then say there is no longer a line. I then go here to my 67, and I say results plus equals current line plus \n, because I just ate that last line of text, but I exited my loop based on my logic structure here. And if I had left this line out, it would have caused a logic error, and I would have left that last line of text outside of my code. Then, like we said, we need to make sure we close that scanner. The reason we close the scanner is to, even though this project itself is not going to have any openings or cause any data loss or security issues, but when you have an open stream of information, you need to make sure that you always close that stream. That becomes very important when you're dealing with sockets and databases, because if you leave that socket or that stream of information open on a database, you open yourself up to corruption, to infiltration, and having someone else do other injections or other possible destruction on your data itself. And so it's a good process to always close things that can open and access files. So we did file scanner.close right here. That ends our try block. We catch an exception. If for some reason we're not able to open that file properly, it's going to throw what's called an IO exception. That IO exception will then be used. Our handle errors method is going to handle it. And it'll give us a nice little pop-up method and show us what's going to happen. And so it's going to return the results as a string as it reads through that file. So we're going to test this out really fast to make sure this works. So what I did is I'm going to go over here into my controller class. And in my controller class, inside my start method, I have a single line of text right here where I'm going to say iocontroller.loadFromFile, passing it this, aka a reference to my current object, and commonwords.text. And so what this does is inside my start method, it's automatically called by my runner. I have that ready to go, and this way I can actually see what's going to happen inside my project. And so iocontroller.loadFromFile, this, commonwords.text. I'm going to make sure that my file actually reads files. And because it's a static method, instead of making an iocontroller object and then my iocontroller.loadFromFile, it's a static one, so I do the name of the class, then a dot, and then loadFromFile, the name of the method itself. Again, inside Eclipse, it gives us the nice little visual cue of italicizing static methods. So you can see this is a static method just by noticing it's italicized. But also the huge clue is the fact that we name it with a class call, aka a capital letter, and that should be your biggest visual cue that this is a static method, because all variables start with what kind of case? Variables start with what? Camel case, so it starts with a lowercase first. App frame is a new chat frame. And so we have the iocontroller.loadFromFile. So we can actually test this out. We're going to use the magic power of debug. So I'm going to attach a breakpoint right here. So it's going to go inside and it's going to stop our execution at this point. And we're going to go and take a look at that. So we can also review debug again. So I have my breakpoint here at line 30 so we can see what happens. It's going to start my project and it's going to get to this point and it's going to pause the execution. So I'm going to call debug and say OK. And it gives us the warning this is going to cause a perspective switch. You want to open up debug? Yes, I do. I say yes. And in my debug perspective, I have my console right here so I can see what's happening inside my text. I have my code that we're looking at right here. I have my stack trace right here so I can see where I am in the execution of my program. And then my breakpoints, my variable windows. The really important one is the variable window. This is where I can see values where I'm at. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to my controller. And as you can see right here, this cute little arrow next to the dot on line 30, that's where I'm at. That's saying, okay, you're right here. I also can see that right here on my stack trace, telling me that my chatbot controller.start line 30 is where I've paused my execution. I have up here my controls for debug again. Now I've shown a few of you this individually, but here's a nice little review of how we do this. So we have our play pause, which will go to the next execution point that has a breakpoint. Our stop, which of course terminates the application. And then we have our two most helpful ones, our step into, step over, and step return. Step into and step over are two most useful ones. Step into lets us go into the method and look in detail at it. Step over says just do this line and go to the next one. And step return is go back to who called you. And we'll use that to leave things, especially if we do it accidentally. So I want to look inside load from file. So I'm going to click on step into, which takes me into that. Then it brings me here to string results equals quotes. So you can see right here I've now changed where I am. I have an app parameter and a file name parameter. If I click on app, oh, app has a app frame, a chatbot, and a my display and a thing. And app is a chat controller object. Woohoo! File name is a string with commonwords.txt inside it because I'm right here at the beginning of line 49. So I'm going to step over this next line. So step over, and now I have my results variable, which gives me a blank because it's nothing inside that. It takes me into my try block, and I have my file open file where I'm about to execute that line. I haven't executed it yet. Notice there's no variable called open file up here because I haven't defined it yet. So I step over that line as well. Now open file is listed in here. It refers to a file. I click on open file. I can look inside and see what I have access to it. There's nothing for my file path. The path itself that's going for that is commonwords.txt. And I can't read or anything about it. It's just right there. It's just a file. It's just a reference right now. My next line, my file scanner, like we talked about, is going to see inside that. So I'll step over my next line again. So I'm going to grab string current line equals file scanner next line because it step over goes to that next line and waits. Okay. So file scanner is now a scanner I've created and it didn't crash. That alone is a great sign. That means we actually were able to open the file. If that had failed, that's where I'd go here to my catch. Maybe we can verify that here in just a second by giving it a bad file. So I'll step over that again. And now I have in current line has the word the. Oh, I read that file. And if I step over this over and over again, I'm going to go through that lovely thing. And as you can see, my results variable, every time I change it, it goes yellow. And it says the \n of \n and \of a \n. And I keep stepping over that dot. Oh wow, that keeps going, it keeps adding, it keeps building to it. Okay, and then I will go here, I'm going to add a new breakpoint right here at filescanner.close. And I'll use the play pause button, aka the resume. Play pause will go up to but stop at that spot, line 68, and wait for me. So my last line of current line was like. So that's the last thing I put inside the results. So if I were to look at results right here, and I scroll all the way down through, my last word is like. So I read all the values of that file. I can verify that right here by going to commonwords.txt and scrolling to the bottom. Hey, look, my last word is like. So we have our file scanner.close. I close that scanner, so file scanner right now is open. I step over that line. And notice that file scanner and all my variables have gone. All the variables that were inside that try catch block have ended. Their scope is over because I've now got to line 70. So everything that was inside here is out of the way. All I have access to are my parameters, app and file name, and my single variable for the local variable for the method itself, results. Okay. I won't hit this catch block at all because I didn't throw an error. So I step over again, and that's going to get me to return results. And because my line of code that called that did nothing, I just threw away those results. It's fantastic. So let's try this with something that doesn't work so we can see what happens if it crashes. So instead of commonwords.txt, this is .txt. Okay? No problem right here. So I'm going to stop this and I'll just hit debug yet again. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to step into this because I want to look inside and see what happens. So I'm going to look inside. I'm going to grab results. Okay, results, let's step over that. Okay, no big deal, results is blank. I'm going to make a new file, and my file line is where I'm at. You can see with that little arrow. I step over that line. Okay, sweet. And the reason that doesn't cause an error is because maybe I want to make a new file at that spot. It's totally okay. I could be wanting to make a file. And so at this point, Java just thinks I'm trying to talk to something. I don't know what I'm talking to yet. But now when I'm trying to read this file using Scanner, this is where it's going to throw the exception. So I'm going to step over this line, and notice that it drops me down here to IO exception, and I have an error. Oh, but look at my error type. My error type is a file not found exception. But a file not found exception is a specific type of an IO exception. So it's going to go here. I'm going to step into that, and it's going to go to handle errors. I now have this error that I'm throwing right here, and I'm just going to hit play. And we can see the results of that with my lovely thing, fidaz.txt, no such file or directory. And so this is what we will see. It's going to give us a nice little pop-up message saying, hey, you screwed up, that file doesn't exist. And so we can see that happening right here. So that's what this is doing for us right here. This is saying it doesn't, that way it doesn't crash the program, and my program is still able to run. I can actually work with Chatbot. So just as a quick review, we're setting it so we can do the quick idea of loading from a file. And so when we load from a file, I go to my IO controller. Okay, so in my load from file, I take a parameter to reference the controller and the file name that I want to talk to. I grab a blank string. I open that file. I then try to read the file, passing it the file that I just passed it. I read over that file over and over again, and then using a while loop because I don't know when to stop. Each time I go through the loop, I add the new line to that. I could change this loop so I could have that work inside just a single line. And so I could have that so instead of file scanner next line, if we hover over this, we will say that it's going to return, if there's no line found, it throws a no such element exception. So I don't want to actually grab that and try and read something that's not there. So that's why I have to make sure check to make sure hasNextLine exists. And so I check that. I then handle that exception with IO exception and close my file when I'm done and return results. Now let's go ahead and let's do the same thing with save to file. So I want to save my something to a text. So I'm going to go back to my lovely controller right here. And I'm going to go to my start method. And this returns a text for us. So I'm going to just create a string object to hold that. And so string results equals IO controller load from file. So that way I have a file that I can grab that to. And I'm going to just call IO controller and then dot and then save to file. And it takes a reference first for the controller, and I want to save my results, and I want to save it to red text.txt. Put that in quotes, of course. And so I'm now calling my IO controller, and I'm going to use it to actually show the save to file. My save to file has 3 parameters, so I'm going to grab that string that I just read from there. I'm going to grab that string, I'm going to put it in a new file called save to text or redtext.txt. And the extension itself doesn't really matter, but .text file is a nice standard way to do this. And so let's check to see what's inside our save to file before we demonstrate it. So I'm going to go back to my IO controller, collapse this one down, and pull up my save to file. So my save to file one has a little bit different set of instructions, as you can see right here. So again, we have 3 parameters, one more than we had earlier. We still need a reference to apps so we can deal with our errors. We have the text that we want to save and the path that we're saving it to. Now my save path right here is a string that I just declared because even though it's a void method, I'm having it so I have access to that so I can use something for it. And then I'm using calendar instance called time so I can get instance. Now sometimes, I don't know when this might happen, but sometimes you might forget to give it a bit of information to actually save a file. And since when we're using the user interaction of our JText fields, we might not save it the right information we want to send it to. So sometimes path might not be what we think it's going to be. And so if path for some reason doesn't have a .text, so if the index of .text is -1, aka I didn't actually give it, I have a save text right here. So I'm going to say, oh, save text. I'm going to say time.get, passing it hour of day, a dash, and time.get calendar.minute plus .text, where I can save my text with some parameters right here. So it'll save it right there to my file. And that way I have access to say, oh, this is what I saved it to. Otherwise, my save path will be path. So if I give it a name that has an extension I'm used to, I know what it's going to be. Otherwise, I have a save path where I can automatically get something to work. Again, because I'm handling I/O, I need to have a try-catch statement. And so this is something we haven't done recently, writing to the file. And so I make a new file reference. Again, I just pass it that path, just like we did earlier. But this time I'm going to use the printWriter class. PrintWriter works really, really easily. It's going to write lines. So printWriter, FileWriter is a new printWriter, passing it that file that I just created. I'm going to then make my scanner, and I have that scanner that I'm going to scan over that text to save, so I'm going to read through that file. So we're using the other way of using a scanner besides system.in or file. And we're now going to say string current line equals quotes. This one I did a little bit differently. So well, it has next. So if there is text in there, I grab that text. I then write that text. So I have that next, I grab the next word, I grab it, print it, put it in. I then close my scanner. I also have to close my FileWriter. This is one that has an actual chance of causing a problem if we didn't close it properly. By not closing the FileWriter, we could leave our file open and subject to corruption. So it's very important we actually do close our FileWriters. I do have an IO exception right here, handling an error. And then if I have any other error, just in case there's some other problem with that that's separate from an IO exception, I pass it the exception throw. It'll catch any other exception that could possibly be thrown from that, and it'll handle those errors as well. Because you can throw more than one error. So that's where I've got that set. And so now we have that same system. So we should now read this common words.txt, and then save a new file with that information. So let's test that out. So I'm going to go save that again. I'm going to go back and hit the debug button. So right here, we're going to step over results. And so we have inside results, here's that file we just read of common words.txt. We already saw that working, so we don't need to step through that again. We stopped at this line results. We're going to step over that right here. So we're going to grab common words. Okay, we read common words into a file. So we have that breakpoint on file scanner.close. So we've got that. We're going to hit play pause to go to the next step. Okay, we're now at IO controller.save to file. So we're now inside this. Results has everything we're looking at. Okay, we're going to go inside there and we're going to save to file. So we step into that line with the step into, which takes us to save to file. And we're going to pass the save path. We step over that line. Does index of occur inside path? Yes, it does. So it's going to fail that test. So save path is now equal to path. Okay, read text.txt. Sweet. We're going to step over that, and we're going to make a new file. We're going to do a print writer equals a new print writer, passing it text file. Scanner's new scanner to go over that string itself. Current line is set to be blank. Great, we've got all these lovely variables right here, nothing inside it. Does text scanner have something? Yes, it does. So it's going to read the next line. Current line is now the, so it read one line out of that text. And we'll write that file to print writer. Step over, repeat. We're going to go right here. We'll put a breakpoint and execute at the FileWriter.close. Do play pause. Okay, nothing's there, no problems. So we step return, which takes us back to who called us, which is this line right here. We're now out of that method, and we hit play pause, so we're done. We've written that, so let's go take a look at our project. We'll go over to Java mode, and we're going to refresh our project right here. And there's read text. I can double click on it, and look, all the files we wrote are in there. We are that same file. It's there. We were able to do this. So we have our IO controller. We have our save file one, which allows us to save text to a file that we press as a path. If we don't give it a .text, it's going to add us a new name for it. So let's try that one right now. So we're going to go to my controller, and definitely no .text inside that, right? And this time, instead of doing a breakpoint, I'm just going to run this. So I have no breakpoints on here. I'm just going to run my project. So just hit play, go over here, right click, and choose refresh. And there is save text 851. I look at my time right here. It was 8:52 right now, so that means it was 8:51 a minute ago. And look, I just created that brand new file. So I can even use this so I could automatically save my text or save my values automatically. So I could add the save text right that. So it can automatically attach that time to it or date. There's lots of things we can pass to that parameter for the calendar object. Where I'm using the time.get, passing it calendar.day. If you notice and you look at that lovely section right here, there are a bunch of constants we can pass as a parameter. So I can pass it the day of the month, the day of the week, the day of the year.